Hello, hope you're doing well. Today I wanted to bring you something a little bit different. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Smite is a hard game. It requires you to know and consider 100 things in any given moment. From what all the characters do with their differing passives, abilities, playstyles, and damage types, to all the items, what they do, which to buy, which your enemy will buy, not to mention the map, objectives, jungle camps, and roles. We also have, well, you get the point. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, to learn. And Smite 2 doesn't really make the game more beginner friendly. Smite 2 is the much needed and much requested sequel to Smite 1, giving the developers an opportunity to remake Smite 1 years later on the newest engine with improved graphics, sounds, systems, etc. This simply was not and is not possible on the outdated Smite 1 engine. The developers have coined the phrase Smite 1 but strictly better, and they were not joking. Smite 2 is a drastic improvement over its predecessor. And with Smite 2 releasing into 24/7 closed alpha, I thought I would make this video to teach you absolutely everything you need to know before you jump into Smite 2. Now, as you can probably imagine, this video is quite long, so I have separated it into different chapters that you can refer back to later. I will also be posting more advanced guides going over subjects such as builds, characters, game modes, roles, and more, so make sure you subscribe and turn notifications on so you don't miss out on any of those videos. As a side note, Smite 2 is in closed alpha, meaning the only way you can play is to receive an alpha code or to buy a Smite Founders Pack. I have placed links in the description of this video for both the Founders Pack and the alpha code sign up for your convenience. Also down in the description is a link to my Twitch account. I will be giving away some Smite Founders Pack during the upcoming live streams, so make sure you follow me there for a chance to win. With that out of the way, welcome to my complete Smite 2 beginner's guide. Starting off, what is Smite 2? Smite 2 is a MOBA, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, meaning you alongside your team will pick one out of an ever-growing and unique cast of playable characters, each with their differing abilities, playstyles, to fight against an enemy team for ultimate victory. Smite 2 currently has two game modes with more on the way, the first of which is Arena. This game mode is exactly what it sounds like. 10 players separated into two teams of 5 will be placed in a coliseum-like arena in order to fight to the death. Every time a player dies, they will be put on a short cooldown before they may respawn and rejoin the fight. Additionally, points will be deducted from their respective team. First team to reach 0 points loses. The next game mode is Conquest. This is Smite 2's main and most competitive game mode. As such, this will be the focus of today's video. Now, Conquest is much more complicated as opposed to Arena, so we have a couple of basics to go over before we dive into Conquest. Like I mentioned earlier, Smite 2 has a multitude of unique characters with 2 new characters releasing every 3 weeks, meaning it's very likely that you will find one or more that fit your playstyle. Regardless of the character you choose, this is your health and mana bar. Health is pretty self-explanatory. If it hits 0, you die. But don't worry, as I mentioned earlier, when this happens you will simply have to wait a couple of seconds before you can respawn and join the action. Mana is the resource used to cast abilities. If you run out of this resource, you will not be able to use abilities until your mana is restored. Now you might be wondering, how do I gain these resources? Well, there are a few ways. First off, you will passively regenerate mana and health slowly over time. Potions will help you gain these resources in a faster manner. However, it is often advisable to press B on your keyboard to return back to the base and regain all of your missing health and mana when you have lost or expended a significant amount of one or both of these resources. Alongside health and mana, characters have access to multiple unique traits and abilities to aid them in battle, the most basic of which is conveniently called a basic attack, also referred to as an auto attack sometimes. These attacks have no cooldown and do not take any mana to use, meaning you can use them pretty consistently. As the name suggests, these are very basic attacks. Think of the swing of a sword or a shooting of an arrow. Note that unless specifically stated otherwise, basic attacks will only hit one person at a time. Moving on, every character with few exceptions will have access to 4 abilities, 3 regular ones and 1 ultimate. Abilities differ from auto attacks because once you use them, they will go on a short cooldown, meaning once you use them, they will not be able to be used again for a couple of seconds. Note that abilities also use up mana. Also, I think it goes without saying, but your ultimate will have a significantly longer cooldown as compared to regular abilities when used. Lastly, all characters have access to a passive. Passives are traits that work alongside and augment your character's abilities, with stat boosts or additional effects. Note that passives do not use mana and often do not require a button press to use, but there are some exceptions. For example, Loki's passive, deal extra damage when hitting an enemy facing away from you with an auto attack. Now, a character will start every single match at level 1 with access to one singular ability. Leveling up in the game will allow you to level another ability and grant yourself some extra stat. Note that every ability can be leveled only 5 times. At character level 20, you will be at your most powerful with both maxed character stats and fully upgraded abilities. But this is not the only way to increase your character's power and effectiveness. Now it's time to talk about items. Right before I do, I know that we have covered quite a lot of information so far, and we're not even halfway done. Feel free to save this video to refer back to it later. Additionally, I have links to my Discord in the description if you have any further questions or need some extra help. This is the easiest way to contact me. Or if you just need some friends to play Smite with, this is the best place to find them. With that out of the way, let's talk about items. Items can be separated into different categories, first of which are your consumables. You have 2 consumable slots total. Consumables are items that are one use, meaning once you use them, they will be consumed and need to be rebought. These items include both mana and health potions, which you can carry 3 of, each in one consumable slot. Wards, when placed on the map, will grant you and your team vision of the area for a given duration. Think of them as motion sensors. You can carry 2 regular wards that will take up 1 consumable slot. Sentry wards are a more expensive form of wards that will cover a larger area. Additionally, it will allow you to see and destroy enemy wards in the area. Moving on, we have your relic slot. You have just 1 of these. Relics are items that function more like abilities. At the start of each match, you can pick 1 relic for free. Make sure you choose wisely, as you cannot change them after the fact. Every time you use a relic, it will go on a long cooldown, but will be able to be used again throughout the entire match. Finally, we have items. You have 7 item slots, one of which is specifically for starter items. These items are very powerful at the start of the game and may be upgraded later on for cheap to remain relevant throughout the game. This is very, and I mean very, important, so make sure you pick one every single match. As for your remaining 6 slots, you may buy whatever item you want from a list of tens of hundreds. Now, I intended to teach you what all of the different statistics these items offer are, but first I need to differentiate between 2 classes of items, passive and active. Active items will offer a stat burst similarly to a passive item. However, they will also give you an additional effect that you can activate with a keybind. Active items will offer a stat boost similarly to passive items. However, they will also give you an additional effect that you can activate with a keybind. For example, Bloodforge will give you a shield when its keybind is pressed. Exactly like relics, these effects will go on cooldown before they can be used again. Passive items, on the other hand, will require no keybinds and will have its additional effects either be active at all times or be conditional on an in-game action. For example, Hydra's Lament passive is as follows. Any auto attack used subsequently after an ability will deal extra damage, so no keybind is necessary. Note that only 3 of your 6 items can be active items. Also worth noting, active effects are very powerful but may only be used once per fight, as the cooldowns are rather long. But passive items will offer higher stats such as damage when compared to active items. With that out of the way, let's go over all of the stats and what they do so you can better be informed on what it is you are buying. I'm kind of going to speedrun this, so feel free to pause the video if needed. Starting off, strength increases damage, intelligence increases damage, attack speed increases your auto attack speed. Kind of think of it as a higher rate of fire, if you will. Lifesteal, heal a portion of the damage you do to enemies with both abilities and auto attacks. Critical strike chance, increase your chance of dealing higher damage with auto attacks. Physical protection, armor against physical damage. Magical protection, armor against magical damage. Penetration will cut through the previously mentioned armor of both kinds, physical and magical. Health increases your total health. Health regen will increase the amount of health that you passively gain over time. Mana increases your mana. And mana regen increases the amount of mana you passively gain over time. Healing reduction reduces your enemy's healing. And then finally, cooldown rate reduces the cooldown on your abilities, meaning you can use abilities more often. These are the stats offered by items in Smite 2. You can usually get multiple stats in just one item at different quantities alongside a passive or an active effect. General rule of thumb is you want a healthy amount of a couple of these stats. Later on in the video, I will go over what items you will want depending on your type of character, but before that, we need to go over some things. Remember earlier when I listed the stats, both intelligence and strength, as increasing your damage? Well, different characters will use either intelligence or strength or both. Note that there are multiple ways to know which character uses which, and I will also be posting guides for all of the characters, so make sure you're subscribed to stay in the loop. Secondly, I mentioned both magical and physical protections. Characters in Smite will either deal magical or physical damage. The symbol next to your character icon will let you know which you deal. Swords are physical and this little circle thingy is magical. Note that regardless of what you buy, strength or intelligence, this will not change your character's damage type. That is consistent. All characters may buy any item, but as I mentioned earlier, some characters scale off of intelligence and others off of strength, so make sure you check what your character uses most effectively before you buy the items. Additionally, some characters such as Mordred and Neith use both effectively, so it's advised to buy both intelligence and strength items on these hybrid characters. And one more final note when it comes to damage types: regardless of your character's chosen stat and form of damage, all auto attacks or basic attacks will scale off of 100% strength and 20% of intelligence, so strength focused builds will always yield higher auto attack damage. More on this later. Finally, I will talk about how buying items work. Smite 2 uses an item component system, meaning you will be buying components of an item and combining them to complete a full item. This might sound complicated, but don't you worry, it's really easy. Allow me to give you an example. This item is Bloodforge. You could just buy the full item and not have to worry about the components. However, you won't always have enough gold to buy the full item, so buying some of its components will ensure that you gain some stats even if it's not the full amount. And the cost of the components will obviously be deducted from the cost of the full item. I like to imagine the system as buying ingredients for a sandwich. First, I'll buy the starter component for strength, and then the starter component for lifesteal. Combining these components will give me a tier 2 item, which contains both more lifesteal and more strength as compared to the other two components, and also a passive. Finally, upgrading this item to a tier 3 full item will grant you its maximum stats and best active effect. It might still seem complicated, but don't worry, you'll get the hang of it after playing just a couple of matches. Now note that if you know what item you want, then you could just spam click the item you want and the game will do all of the combining components for you. But how will you know what item you want? Well, I'll touch on this subject more in depth later in the video, but the left part of your item shop has categories that are very helpful. You don't need to know what item you want specifically, just what stats you want. For example, I'm looking for an item with intelligence, penetration, and cooldown. I could just filter using those statistics and see the item that contains the stats I want. Then I can compare the remaining items and choose between them. I think I'll buy Spear of Desolation. Note that the more variety of stats an item offers, the less of each stat it will give. Now, even with my awesome explanation of Smite 2's item system, newer players can find all of this very overwhelming, and I'm a firm believer that building is the last thing you should focus on. Thankfully, the game will offer you some pre-made builds at the start of the game that will automatically purchase the items for you upon returning to base. These builds are not bad at all, and it will ensure that you focus on learning the basics of the game without being overwhelmed by also having to learn to build all at once. If you are an experienced player and you know what you are doing, then select manual build instead. I know, that was a lot of information, but don't worry, we have a lot more to go over. Like I mentioned, feel free to save the video to refer back to later. Also, this video took a lot of work, so if you're finding it helpful, I would really appreciate if you dropped a like and a comment on this video. Before we go over the next category, I thought I would go over the in-game UI briefly, so you can get an idea of everything we just talked about. This is Smite 2's in-game UI. Starting at the top, your team and their ultimate statuses will be displayed on the top left of your screen, with the enemy team on the top right. In between this, you will find the in-game time, team kill count, and total team gold. This over here is your minimap, the most important part of your HUD. This displays everything happening in the match, from jungle and objective camps that are up, more on this later, to your and the enemy team's positions on the map. In the bottom left, you will see your 7 items, and finally the center cluster will give you all the information you need to know about your character, from their damage type to your health and mana bar, also your kills, deaths, assists. These are your 4 abilities, followed by your chosen relic, and finally your consumables. and their respective keybinds. Additionally, if you buy an active item, its keybind and icon will appear next to your consumables. I on your keyboard will bring up your item shop, which we have already covered in detail. Pressing tab will show you a scoreboard, which will give you a detailed look into all of the players' golds, kills, assists, deaths, and builds. The T screen will show you the top performers in the match with top damage or top gold, etc. Also, hovering over any item, ability, relic, or consumable will show you a description. Specifically hovering over one of your abilities will show you not only what it does, but also damage and effect numbers, as well as what they scale off of, being intelligence or strength. The ability screen will have even more details on your character, their passives and their abilities. With all this information, surely you're ready to dive right into your first Conquest match, right? Yes, but I never showed you how to actually get into a game, silly. Very quickly, let's go over the game systems. This is Smite 2's main screen, lobby screen, main lobby, home screen. I don't know what it's called, but this is what you're going to be greeted with when you first open the game. First off, we have your game mode selected at the bottom left. We currently have access to Conquest, Arena, Arena versus bots, Ranked Conquest, more on this later, Practice Range, and finally Custom Lobbies. On this screen, you may also choose your region. On the top right, you will see your account level and the in-game currency. Right below that, you have access to your social features such as your friends list and party features. Clicking the gods section on the top right will show you all of the playable characters. Selecting a character will give you all of the details you need to know, running from all of the abilities, passives, to what type of damage they deal and what item stats they should scale off of. Furthermore, the mastery system will give you rewards for playing a god. The more you play them, the more mastery points you will get, unlocking emotes, skins, and other rewards. Finally, the loadout screen will allow you to choose the skins, emotes, loading frames, and other cool stuff to equip on your character. Moving on, the profile tab will show you just that, your profile. Admittedly, this is a feature that's a bit limited, with Smite 2 being in closed alpha, but you can see things such as achievements and your match history. This is also where you will see your daily login rewards. Every time you get on, you will get rewarded for playing every day. Finally, you can see your rank. Ranked. This game mode will be your way to prove your worthiness against players worldwide. You start at rock bottom, also known as clay, and work your way up the ranks until you're deity at top 100 players worldwide. It goes without saying that you should avoid ranked until you gain a bit of experience. Alright, finally the moment you've been waiting for, Conquest. Starting off, Conquest is a 5v5 mode separated into roles. When you load into a game, you should first claim your role. They will eventually add auto-assigned roles where you'll be able to select what role you want prior to queuing for a game later, but for now you'll have to claim it. After that, you can select the character you want to play. Characters are not separated into different categories, however there are definitely specific roles where specific characters work best. This is not really illustrated well for newer players, so I will be posting a video talking about what characters you should play and what roles soon. Also note that characters often work well in multiple roles through different builds, which I will also cover in later videos. There is simply too much information to put into one video, so I'm sorry for that, but again, simply by subscribing you can ensure that you don't miss out on all of this information later. Also, as I mentioned earlier, my Discord is linked down in the description if you have any questions. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the minimap. Conquest has 3 lanes spanning from your base to the enemy's base. The main objective of Conquest is to, alongside your team, make your way to the enemy base and kill their Titan for victory. But hold on, because it's not that easy. There are a couple obstacles standing between you and dominance. First of which are the towers. These will deal heavy damage to anyone standing in their range. There are 2 in every lane. After taking out both towers, you will then have to defeat the Phoenix. This is a stationary sentinel like the towers. Unlike the towers, a Phoenix does significantly more damage and will respawn a couple minutes after being killed. Note that once 2 towers and a Phoenix are destroyed in a lane, you will gain access to the Titan and will be able to go for the win. However, it is advisable to also take out the other towers in all of the lanes, as they weaken the Titan significantly and will make it easier to kill. Also note that towers and Phoenixes only take auto attack damage, but the Titan will take damage from actives, abilities, auto attacks, and anything else you can throw at it. So that's it, just take out 2 towers, 1 Phoenix, and the Titan and bam! Your first Conquest win. Hold on, two problems with this. One, you deal no damage to any of these obstacles guarding the Titan, much less doing damage to the Titan. And two, the enemy team is not just going to stand idly by while you try to take the win. Remember earlier in the video when we mentioned gaining levels to increase your stats? These are minions. They spawn in waves every 30 seconds and will walk down all of the lanes. Killing them will grant you experience, allowing you to level up. How about the items? Don't they make me stronger too? Yes. Killing minions and enemy players will also grant you gold, which you can then use to buy items to increase your strength. Every lane is separated by a jungle. In the jungle, you will find what we conventionally refer to as jungle camps. Killing these will also give you experience and gold. Additionally, the colored camps, also referred to as buff camps, will drop a temporary buff that you can pick up to gain increased stats and additional effects that will aid you in fighting the enemy team. These jungle camps will go on a short cooldown after being killed before they can respawn and be killed again. One more thing of note with these camps, notice that they are numbered. This indicates the buff's level. The more you clear them, the stronger the buff they drop will become. A bit advanced, but you can actually invade and take the enemy's camps to deny them golden experience, but most importantly, deny their buffs a level and take it for your team, meaning you will have access to stronger and better camps, which will aid you in victory. With all of that info dump out of the way, let's talk about the roles in Smite, starting with mid lane. Mid lane is exactly what it sounds like. It's the lane running through the middle of the map. Usually characters with ranged high ability damage will be played here. Moving on, solo lane is the shorter of the two side lanes, and it will be on the orange side of the map. The characters played here will want to build tanky, ensuring that they can soak up damage in fights, but they still want to do a little bit of damage. Up next, ADC. This is the longest lane on the map and will always be located on the gold side of the map. ADCs are characterized by high auto attack range damage. They notoriously have a weak early game, but a spectacular late game once you have some items built. To help them out with this weak early game, support role will start in the lane with them. Supports are what they sound like. Their main job is to support the team. This usually means building full tank and taking all of the damage for your weaker damage dealers. Note that around the 10-minute mark you want to start rotating and helping other lanes. Finally, jungle. This is by far the hardest role and I would recommend staying away from this if you are new. Junglers usually have high mobility and high damage but are easily killed. Their job is to roam around the map clearing the jungle camps we went over earlier in this section. They might also gank a lane to help the other roles get a kill on an unaware enemy with both the element of surprise and the advantage of putting the enemy in an outnumbered position. With them not having the constant experience and gold from a minion wave, it is very easy to fall behind, and like I mentioned earlier, I recommend learning all of the other roles before jumping into jungle. Now this doesn't even begin to cover the roles, however I again simply do not have enough time in this video to go over them all in detail. I'll save that for some advanced role guides which I will release later this month. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but you can sub and stay tuned for those videos if you need them. Now that we have covered most of the basics and also roles in Conquest, let me talk about what an average game of Conquest would look like. An average game of Conquest can be divided into 3 sections: early game, mid game, and late game. Starting off with early game, this will on average be the first 12 to 15 minutes of the game. Your main focus regardless of your role will be farming, clearing minion waves and jungle camps in order to level up and buy items to increase your overall damage and capabilities. Obviously killing your enemy laner if possible. Mid-game will start again after the 12 to 15 minute mark. By this portion of the game, you and your team will be a higher level and have some items under your belts. At this time you will start grouping up with your team, disregarding the lanes a little bit in order to get objectives. What objectives? Mostly towers, but very important is the Gold Fury. This objective is very tanky and cannot be cleared by one person alone. Usually you will need 2 to 3 people to kill a Gold Fury, all a decent level with a couple items built. Although this objective is hard to kill, the award given to the team that kills it is huge. As the name suggests, the Gold Fury will give a large sum of gold to the team that kills it. After it is killed, it will go on a decent cooldown before respawning and being able to be taken again. Note that killing towers will also grant you and your team a good amount of gold. Finally, the late game. At this stage of the game, you will, regardless of your role, disregard your lane completely in favor of grouping up as a full team to fight the enemy team. As I mentioned at the start of the video, when someone is killed, they will go on a short cooldown before they are able to respawn and join the fight again. Well, the more that someone dies and also the longer the game goes, this cooldown gets longer. Meaning in the late game, once you and your team kill the enemy, they take longer to respawn, giving your team an opportunity, all maxed out levels and full items, to quickly destroy towers, phoenixes, and anything else that stands in the way of the Titan. Now there is one more objective that I haven't mentioned. This is the Fire Giant. It will usually take an entire team to kill it. When killed, it will give everyone gold and XP, but most importantly, give your entire team a huge buff that you can use to demolish the enemy team. Finally, it's time to make your way over to the enemy base, kill their Titan, and win the game. You are probably getting tired of hearing my annoying voice by this time, but I wanted to leave you with some tips and tricks before I let you go. Some things I wish I knew before I started. 1. Auto level and auto build. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Smite 2 is very complicated. You have hundreds of things to learn. Trying to learn everything at once is not really beneficial. I firmly believe that your first priority should be learning the basics of the game, to include the map, the roles, game flow, and mechanics. Learning how to build and what every character does is simply too much. Thankfully, Smite 2 has an auto build and auto level feature. Auto level will automatically put levels into upgrading the correct abilities on your character, so you don't have to make that decision every single game. And more importantly, picking a pre-made build at the start of your game ensures that you don't have to worry about the most complicated part of the game early on. Once you have some experience under your belts, you can turn off auto level and start experimenting with your own builds. Number 2, probably the most important tip I can give you, is to focus on one character at a time. This goes hand in hand with the first tip. You have so much to learn. Trying to learn all of the characters at once will be your downfall. Pick one character you like and stick with them for a couple of games. Once you feel you know the character well, you can move on to the next. The third tip is similar to my second one, but just as important. Try to stick to one role at the start. Learning all 5 Conquest roles is even harder than learning to play all of the characters. Stick to one role and really master it. Going along with tip number 2, make it your goal to pick one role and learn at least 3 characters in that role. This way you ensure that you not only master the role, but also a decent cast of characters to play in that role. Slowly but surely you will become a Smite demon. Number 4, pay attention to your Smite minimap. The number one mistake I see in new players is not paying attention to the minimap. It is the single most important tool you have in your arsenal. The map will give you so much information at just one glance. The position of your teammates, from the position of your teammates, the available farm on the map, and most importantly, the position of your enemies. Use all of this information to your advantage. It will help you gain more XP and gold over your opponent, position correctly with your teammates, and avoid dying to enemies rotating towards you. Number 5 is communication is key. Smite 2 is a team game. Very rarely will a game be won by a single player alone. It is a team effort. Smite does offer voice chat, and I would highly recommend you use it. This way you and your team can communicate plans of attack, plan out strategies for victory, and let each other know of the enemy team player movements. If, however, you don't feel comfortable using your voice, the game does have a VGS system. Using a combination of keyboard presses, all starting with V, you can quickly and easily give out information, callouts, and objectives to your team. Some examples include VEF for enemy missing, and VA2 for attack middle lane. While these are basic, they're very effective. Number 6 is do not be afraid to mute. Now this is kind of the opposite of the last tip, but any multiplayer game is going to have some bad apples. If people are being toxic over voice chat, game chat, or abusing the VGS system, don't be afraid to mute them and report them, because honestly, we don't need them in our community. If you want to meet some non-toxic friends to play Smite with, then our Discord server is a perfect place for you. You can find experienced players to help you learn the game faster, or newer players if you want to play with people and learn together at the same pace. Any questions you may have can be answered as well, so again, click the link down in the description and join our community. My last tip is to have fun. Learning Smite is going to take time, and it won't be easy, but that doesn't mean it needs to be miserable. You're going to die, you're going to lose, everybody does. Don't let it discourage you. Everyone was new at Smite at some time, everyone has bad games. I still feed 8,000 hours in. Just have fun and know that with practice, you can and will be the best. That's it. You have made it to the end of the video. I'd like to give a million thanks to everyone who watched till the very end. This video took me a couple of all-nighters to finish, but it was definitely worth it. I wanted to give you guys all of the information that I never had when picking up Smite 1, and I hope I accomplished that goal. Although this video was extensive, there is a lot more I'd like to teach you, from character guides to role guides, more extensive build guides, and much more. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those upcoming videos. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you dropped a like and a comment. Also, feel free to share the video with a friend that you think could use some help with Smite 2. As always, my Discord and Twitch are linked down in the description if you're interested in talking with me, have any questions for me, or just want to watch me play Smite live. With all that out of the way, I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!